Hello and welcome to the Rails Board meeting. I am Laura Turner, President of the Rails Board, and I call this meeting to order on Friday, February 22nd at 1 p.m. Margie, can you please call the roll?
Sure. Christine Barr.
Here.
Let me try. Dave Berry.
Here.
Susan Busenbar.
Here.
Michael Campbell. Gwen Gregory.
Here.
Liza Hickey.
Here.
Jay Caston.
Here.
Paul Mills.
Here.
Scott Poynton.
Here.
Daisy Porter Reynolds.
She's right
Here.
Dee Reynolds. Nadia Sheikh.
Here.
Michelle Simmons.
Here.
Thomas Stagg.
Here.
And Laura Turner.
Here.
Okay, thank you.
Dee Reynolds
Okay,
is here too. I just.
Okay, great.
Okay, great.
Okay. Let's move to recognition of guests and announcements. Let's start here in Burr Ridge. Do we have any guests?
Dan Bostrom, Rails.
Brian Smith from Rails.
Anna Beam, Rails.
Joe Philippek, Rails.
Mickey Zimmerman, Rails.
Jim Krieger, Rails.
Mary Witt, Rails.
Okay, thank you.
Wesley Smith Rails.
Jane Plass, Rails.
Deirdre Brennan, Rails.
And Margie Schmidt, Rail.
Thank you. Do we have any guests in Bolingbrook? Cole Valley? East Peoria?
Kendall Orison Rails. Mark Hatch Rails.
Robert Morgan, Rails.
Illinois State Library?
Gwen Harrison, present.
Monmouth College?
Sarah Henderson, Hughes Library.
And the Galesburg Public Library? So I need to do public comments. Are there any public comments here in Burr Ridge? East Peoria? Illinois State Library?
Not at this time.
Okay, thank you. Monmouth College?
No, thank you.
Okay. Let's move on to the adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion and second for the adoption of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so we have moved by Daisy and second by
Steve.
Dave? Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? Motion carried. That threw me for a second. Okay, approval of Rails Board meetings, financial reports, and expenditures. For the Rails Board minutes from January 18th, 2019, the regular meeting, may I have a motion for the approval of the minutes from the January 18th Rails Board meeting?
So moved.
Got it? Do we have a second?
Second.
I'm going to do move by Paul and second by Gwen. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
I think I have one correction.
Oh, we
Okay,
do have
whoops.
some corrections, actually.
I'm sorry, what?
Jim has a correction also.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Don't you want changing the point on at the bottom of page one? Are these the minutes? We're doing the minutes, right?
We're doing the minutes of the January
Yeah,
18th
at the
meeting.
bottom of page one, where it's in the second to the last sentence, it says, our IMRF pension account is 112% funded, and we pay the lowest possible employer rate contribution of It says in here .019, it should be .91. Yes,
So does Margie make that correction?
yes, Margie
I
will
made
make it. And yes, Jay.
And then in 7.2.1, the very last sentence says they were introduced to Nancy George or Nancy George?
Nancy,
That's Nancy.
Nancy.
it's Nancy.
I see your question, though.
Yeah.
Never heard that name.
That was it for me.
Right, thank you.
Okay, I think I'm gonna have to do a motion again. Can I have a motion for the corrected minutes from the January 18th Rails Board meeting?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is that moved by Scott, second by Dave? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
Abstain.
We have one abstention, and motion carried.
Who abstained?
Daisy.
Easy. Yeah.
Okay, next we have Jim with the financial report.
Okay. The financial report is included in your board packets. It's for the month ended January of 2019. We're 7 months through the fiscal year now. The cash and investment balance at the end of the month was $11.5 million, which would fund just under 1 year of operations. But and we still had a receivable of over $3.2 million from the state for the final installment of the fiscal year 18 Aryan per capita grant. That was received a week ago. So we are now, we've been fully funded for 2018, and that would add about 3.3 months to our coverage. So we're good for a while. And so that was our highlight of the cash. Our revenues through January were just under 530,000 below budget, as the Aryan per capita grants had slipped below budget. In February, they'll be probably about 2 million or so above budget, because it's very sporadic how we get the money. Our investment income continues very strong. It's almost 42,000 above budget. The rates are right around 2.5%. Now we'll have another 3.3 million to earn that interest on. The expenditures are 549,000 under budget due to below budget in almost all categories, particularly personnel, which is over 150,000. And contractual services and professional services. The personnel, 123,000 of the 150,000 are salaries due to delayed hirings and some attrition of 2 people in November, in which we're in the process of filling those positions now. Let's see. And yeah, the contractual services are about 150,000 under budget. Probably around 100,000 of that is from the LSAP membership grants, which are not going to hit the 615,000 budgeted. We have given out 257,000. And we did buy in January. We took delivery of 3 new delivery box trucks, which should help our fuel efficiency in our delivery operation. That cost just under $135,000. Can I answer any questions?
Just a comment, we're below budget on many items. Are we ready when the worst happens? We're not gonna be below budget. I realize we have a budget that we've approved.
Right.
And it looks real nice on paper that
I don't
everything,
see
so
us-
many items are coming in.
Yeah,
below budget.
overall, I don't see us going over. The salary budget, that portion is going to stick even as we replace people. That's going to stick, so that's 150,000 in personnel costs there. The LSAP budget is not going to be hit. The contractual services probably will, and maybe go over a little bit, but overall, we should be in good shape.
Thank you.
And we do try to budget throughout the year to go with our seasonal patterns. For example, like fuel costs, we pay those a month late, so in January or July, we budget no cost for that month, but in June, we budget 2 months' cost. So that we try to make the comparison as true to our actual or our seasonal type of expenditures as we can. So, so the variances throughout the year do mean something. It gives us an indication of whether we're on track or not.
Thank you.
So I think we move into the approval of the expenditures for January 2019.
Okay, that's contained at the, towards the end of the report. The expenditures for January were $1,456,135.69. That's a bit above what our monthly averages are. The January payments include our annual payments for workers' comp and our LIRA liability insurance. That totaled over $200,000, but those expenses are spread throughout the year. So you don't see that in our expenditure report. And it was also a month in which we made payments to the 2 LSAPs that received money from us, and that was about $300,000. So it's a little bit higher expenditure month. Are there any questions? Hopefully I already explained it.
Okay, may I have a motion for the approval of the check voucher register of January 2019?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Moved by Jay, second by Daisy. Margie, can you call the roll?
Sure. Christine Barr.
That's a lot of post-it notes.
Yeah. Dave Barry.
Yes.
Dave Barry.
Yes.
Susan Barr.
Yes.
Somebody
Gregory.
needs to mute. Can anybody who's not talking mute because we get feedback? Thank you.
Glenn Gregory.
Yes.
Liza Hickey.
Yes.
Jay Caston.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Daisy.
Yes.
Reynolds.
Yes.
Nadia. Shake. Michelle Simmons.
She said yes.
Oh, she said yes.
I saw her
I
say
didn't.
yes.
Thomas Stagg
Yes.
and Laura Turner.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Okay, let's move on to reports. Let's start with the report from the Rails president, which is me. I don't have a report for this time. I get that confused between me and you sometimes, Steve.
Oh, no, you're the president.
Let's go into the Rails Board committee reports. The consortia committee, Paul.
I will match your no report with a no report from that committee.
Well, I will match your no report from the executive committee. Back to you with the policy committee.
Well, I will see your no report from that committee and say there is no report from the policy committee at this time.
I will accept that. I will go over to Jane for any report from the resource sharing committee.
I will make it unanimous, no report from the Resource Sharing Committee.
Okay, great. Okay, let's go into Rails reports then. The Rails monthly report. This one I think is the.
Should I say about the advocacy committee?
I think it's under
Oh,
advocacy
okay,
report.
okay.
I mean, you can't.
Do you want to start?
Whatever.
Yeah,
Well, I
go
can
ahead.
just say, since we do now have a Rails Board Advocacy Committee, that we just had a meeting this morning before this meeting,
Nice.
for our first meeting, so.
Cool.
But we'll talk more about it after and there.
Okay. So let's go back to the Rails monthly report.
Okay, that would be me.
Yes,
And I'm
Dee.
afraid I do have a report. So there. Okay, the first thing that I want to tell you all is that I'm going on vacation on Sunday for 2 weeks.
Yay.
And, I mean, yay, I'm sorry, but I'm coming back.
Please come back.
Are you going anywhere fun?
I'm going to Costa Rica.
Oh, nice.
So then the week I come back, there are a couple of personal things have come up, so I'm going to be out a little bit again, and that's the week that the board packet is due, so I have a feeling things might be a little sketchy for the next month's packet. It might be on Monday instead of Friday, so I'm just, not that I'll have much to report, because I will have been
You could tell us about Costa Rica.
on, yeah, if you want to hear about Costa Rica.
Slideshow.
Sometimes people
Yes. Slideshow.
There you go.
Slideshow.
don't want to hear about warm areas. Anyway, let's see. Okay, so yes, we did just have the advocacy committee. That was great. We'll tell you more about that. I want to just update you on a few things. So we have heard, we have received a preliminary proposal for the next phase of the LASA study. So we're waiting on that. And I believe that, and Greg may talk about this too, there's not going to be any changes in FY20 at all, I don't think. The plan now is for Rails and Heartland to each have a separate agreement with Carly. So that's what we're expecting going forward. Explore More is really starting to take off. We're about to be able to take on a lot of the Swan libraries, which is really going to be big because they're in a real sweet spot for a lot of these museums. So I don't know if they'll all be onboarded by April 1, but we're going to give it our best shot. I'm going to report later on about some of the national and statewide projects. We did have the premiere of our video just this week up at the Gail Borden Library, and it went really well. They had a lot of people there. They had all the kids that were in the video were there, and they got to make little speeches, and it was really great. I think that's about it for my report. I'm happy to answer any questions. Any questions?
You mentioned in your delivery contract for 2020, looking past that to 21 and further down.
Yes.
And you had mentioned capital improvements.
Yep.
Are we thinking of RFID for the service units at all?
Well,
Is that something that's in the works?
it's that would be, I mean, I think, eventually something has to be done to automate the delivery and the sorting process in particular. That would be really expensive. But, I mean, if you think about it, we'd have to get all the libraries to have RFID in a perfect world, because but there are other solutions, barcodes. Other states have used a barcode, been able to put a barcode on everything. So I don't know what the answer is, but it just seems to me that in this day and age, we have to at least think about ways that we might include more technology. It was tough in Massachusetts. They did this with barcodes, and libraries didn't want barcodes on the front of their items, and they didn't want to do this, and they didn't want to do that. But ultimately, when they were, given the choice between having a barcode where they didn't want it and saving money on delivery, they picked saving money on delivery. So I don't know. I just know that over the next year, things are going to be pretty stable. So we can look at, making a plan not only for those kinds of technological advances, but if we need to move our buildings, or relocate where our hubs are.
Thank you.
Yep.
Was there anything more about the East Peoria hub because their building was
So
the
the-
IT 3
Right.
wanted it back.
So the latest on that is that we are able to stay there for another year. I don't remember if we have a month-to-month arrangement, Jane, or if we have a
It's
year.
not month to month, but we do have I believe it's like a
60-day
60-day out.
So we have a good situation, and the latest, the most recent LASA update to us when they looked at some additional data that included Heartland, I mean, you won't be surprised to hear that it does make sense, the most sense for the transfer point to be East Peoria. I mean, if you look at a map, East Peoria is kind of in the middle of things. Whereas now we're driving to Champaign and it just costs more. Not a lot more, but it costs more. So that would mean that, so if East Peoria were to be the transfer point, the current East Peoria hub is not large enough. And so that's really what we need to figure out over the next year, where we would go and et cetera. But we have time.
Right.
So that's, I think we're in a good place about that right now. Any other questions?
Okay, we will move to the service of the month report, the campaign to help libraries tell their stories, and that is Mary.
Yes, and I'm going to invite the fabulous communications
Yay.
team to join me.
Oh, you guys are fabulous.
They usually are. Yeah. I want to make sure that you know before we get started on the campaign, I want to make sure that you know everybody here. The communications team is primarily responsible for engaging our members, and that includes members of all types. We also communicate with them using a variety of activities. Those are in person, online, and print. So any communication or engaging, that's these people here. I think you all know me, I'm Mary Witt, but you may not know these people, so I'd like them all to maybe, these people, I'd like them all to just introduce themselves and just say a sentence or two about, your major responsibilities.
I'm Brian Smith. My job title is Applications and Web Developer, but really I'm a librarian who builds websites. So most of my work here at Rails involves building and improving and maintaining our websites.
My name is Dan Bostrom. I'm the member engagement manager. My position means that I do a lot of outreach to our member libraries, a lot of networking. Whenever someone requests a site visit, I'll go and talk to them about products and services that Rails has to offer. I help on the communications team in terms of like social media and some of the other communications.
I'm Nikki Zimmerman. My title is Marketing and PR Specialist. And I put out the e-news every week. Hopefully you all get the Rails e-news. Usually a plethora of information. And I also do different graphic material, so any of our collateral stuff here. And we'll be working on hopefully providing more graphic-related images for libraries to use. So we'll have templates or things like that. So for those that don't have marketers, that they can, use things that we provide. I'm also always at the booths at conferences, so if you come and say hi.
So that's in a nutshell who we are and what we do. Now we want to dive into the campaign a little bit. I know that you heard Dan talked about it last month at the board meeting. You also have in your packet a description of the campaign. So we just want to go over some of the highlights. The reason that we're doing this is that we heard repeatedly throughout our strategic planning process last year from all types and sizes of libraries how much they needed help telling their story, showing their value to their different stakeholders. And as you know, we now have a strategic plan goal to cover this, to work with our libraries to help tell their stories. So this campaign is going to take place throughout the year. It's going to grow and evolve. What you see on paper there is not what it's going to end up to be, because needs are going to change and new developments are going to occur. But we're going to be working on it throughout the year. A major thing that we're doing first, which is going on right now, is we're conducting a survey of all of our member libraries. We know some of their concerns, and you'll see in the report there's some direct quotes from the strategic planning session. So you'll see their concerns in general. But we want to dive more specifically into exactly how we can help them tell their stories. So the survey came out this week. It's going to last until March 8th. I hope you will all fill it out or tell your libraries to fill it out. If you represent a type of library, please encourage, other libraries to fill it out. We really want to hear from as many of our members as possible so we can tailor this campaign to meet their needs. Another thing I want you to know is that it's not just going to be us working on this campaign. We're kind of kicking things off, but there are going to be other Rails staff involved in the campaign. For example, there's going to be a huge continuing education component, I'm sure. So Joe and his team will be involved, even though he's shaking his head. We just talked at the, Gwen will probably say later, we just talked at the Advocacy Committee. They'll be involved. We're also going to work with other library organizations. We're going to find out what ILA is doing, what IL, the Heartland Library System is doing, what everybody else is doing, so we don't duplicate their efforts, and also so we can partner with them on the various initiatives. Now I'm going to let my colleagues, I'll use colleagues rather than people this time.
Minions.
No, they're colleagues. I'll let them talk a little bit more about what specific aspects of the campaign.
Sure. As I mentioned, I do website stuff here, so there will be a website that will be part of the campaign. It'll have a bit different look and feel as our other websites, in part because this website will have a more specific purpose to encourage and inspire our member libraries to do something, to be taking action. The website's address will be mylibraryis.org. If you're on the laptop now, don't look at there because there's nothing there to see yet. We did choose the name My Library Is for a couple of reasons. One, it is sort of a prompt for people at our libraries to fill in the blank after that. My library is doing great stuff. Let's tell the library story. It's also a message for the library visitors that it's a message of belonging, that this is my library. Mary had mentioned that we are doing a survey now to get more input from our members on what's needed from the campaign. But based on the information we got from the long-range planning, our current thoughts about content on the website is to have provide guidance for the libraries in the form of talking points, instruction, best practices, and communicating with various audiences. Be providing references to outside resources. Mary had mentioned IL and ILA and ALA and other organizations that can also provide more guidance. And we're also going to use the website as a venue for libraries to be sharing things, sort of what I like to call ideas worth stealing. Libraries love to borrow things from other libraries, including marketing plans, templates, graphics, and their success stories. And now I will turn things over to Dan.
Yeah, so as Brian mentioned, I think there's a big role for our members to meet one another and talk about these things. So I see that as part of my role is to help facilitate the networking discussions. We'd really like to take this type by type, so get academics talking to each other about the ways that they tell their stories in their libraries, the special libraries talking to themselves about. So we'll be doing that throughout the course of the campaign. We've already started working with partners, as Mary alluded to. We already have a really great relationship with IACRL. And they've been great, and so we've actually already started some of these networking discussions about when and where we're going to be held. I don't have anything announced now, but and then we'll continue that with other organizations around Illinois like ISLE and SLA Illinois, and there'll also be opportunities for public libraries to do the exact same thing. So we're really excited about that. I think it'll be a chance for people to talk about, again, the things that they're doing, best practices, what is working out there, what isn't. So many different libraries have so many different messages because their communities, need different things from them, frankly. So, and then also, my role will also be to kind of help drive that online component in terms of social media. So we'll be brainstorming some of the things behind that once we get more information on the survey.
So we all really work on this together a lot. Both of these gentlemen have mentioned, about sharing best practices. And so one of the things that I have already started is to reach out to the libraries that have marketing staff. Well, And even if they don't have a designated person, there's probably somebody at their library that does marketing, right? Big and small. And so to reach out to them and to, first of all, inform them and about the campaign, because they're, I think, really going to be the ones that bring it into the library and talk to the staff and maybe even push the directors to, run with it more with us. And so I've started that conversation already, very preliminary, but we'll keep moving with that. And aside from, helping them spread the word about the campaign, also to find who out there is an expert that can offer best practices to smaller libraries, to libraries that are seeking help, that can, share any kind of successes they have, that might even want to share a template of a marketing plan or whatever it may be. But just to help answer questions that maybe the 3 or 4 of us, don't get to. It's always better to have more people. I'll also produce marketing collateral that might come up. We're not just for the campaign itself, but then hopefully, again, as was mentioned, some templates that can be used by our libraries. That's one of the biggest things I hear in the marketing networking group that I go to is, for those smaller libraries, they need help. And so hopefully we can provide them with just simple, easy ways to download and slap their logo on and make it their own. And part of those best practices, and I think Brian might have mentioned this a little bit, was just one of the things we came up with was, being able to have some talking points. So, staff or board or whoever it is feels comfortable talking to different audiences, different stakeholders, maybe developing a short elevator speech. So when somebody says, why should I use your library? Or why do libraries matter in the age of Google? That they have a quick answer that they feel comfortable with. So just all those different kinds of things to kind of help make life easier in order to tell the library story.
So that's the campaign in a nutshell. Are there any questions, comments, suggestions? Dave?
Is this first question, is this website going to be directed towards libraries or the public, the general public?
It will be primarily directed towards the libraries because it's going to be a resource for the libraries to use. I think there will probably be a public component of the website, though.
My library is going to be a question there where people can type in an answer?
That's a very good idea, and that's something that could possibly be included in there. And I can see us also with, the libraries could be using that as for communicating and providing a feedback loop with their users.
To tell their story in whatever way they want to. My library is welcoming. My library is beautiful. My library is a source of information. However they want to tell their story is kind of why we chose that. And so we don't know exactly how it's going to manifest yet, but that's a good idea.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. How about Gwen and then?
Go ahead.
So what's the timeline for the campaign?
It's going to go throughout the year. As I mentioned, it's going to, change and evolve as things go on. The main thing that, is really going to get things kicked off are these survey results. So the deadline for that is March 8th. So after that, I see us planning a lot more concrete activities, and we'd be able to give you a timeline on some of those. But we plan on carrying it out throughout the year. When we have our exhibit booths, I would like it to be a major focus of our exhibit booths, but throughout 2019.
I was just going to comment, I think this whole project and all that it entails is fantastic. I'm so happy that
Thank you.
Rails is doing this. So.
Thank you. Jay?
Can you give us an idea, the response of how many libraries and of how many libraries have responded to the survey so far?
Yes, I can tell you exactly. I'm so excited of it. So we released a survey on Wednesday. We have 174 responses. We have 29 from academics, which I think is good, and thank you to Gwen for your help. Publics, we have 75. Schools, we have 56, which is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
Specials, we need a little more help. We have
I haven't done
14.
mine yet, I admit.
We have 14, but Laura's going to help promote it to the specials are usually the ones that trail a little bit and we need to get a little more on.
We're special.
So anything, any of you can do to spread the word. 174, I think that's
Specialty.
pretty good for what, 2 days?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're inviting anybody to fill it out, not just the library director. We want to hear from anybody that's interested, you know, because probably marketing and PR staff at the library would have a different opinion than the director. So anyone at one of our libraries is invited to fill it out. And it's on our, if you want to refer people to it easily, it'll be in our e-news. It was in our e-news this past week, and it'll be in our e-news until the deadline. It's also on our homepage. If you look on our homepage, there's a article there, I think it says Complete Rails Survey by March 8th. So if you want an easy way to tell people without, you know, remembering a URL, those are 2 easy ways to tell people to look for the survey.
Mary, I may have missed this. When you say anyone may fill it out, does that include patrons?
No, these
Okay.
are library.
Just library
yeah, sorry.
staff?
Yeah.
How about board members?
You are welcome to fill it out.
Okay.
Libraries, actually, I've looked at some of the survey results. Our libraries are very interested in, you know, surveying patrons and getting their comments and things. So even though that's not a part of this campaign, see it as, you know, helping them to figure out the best ways to do that. So that's how it'll kind of reach down to the patrons. But our main contact, as Brian mentioned, is libraries. It's probably something for the general public. Anybody else?
Anybody out there?
Anybody on the phone or through the video conference?
Okay, well, thank you. You'll be hearing more from us as the year goes on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's like a great. Okay, I know Gwen had touched on this earlier, but if you could give us a little bit more about the advocacy committee?
Sure. So today we had the first meeting of the new board advocacy committee, which we approved the charge on our October 26th board meeting. So the members of the advocacy committee are, I don't want to miss anyone, me, which I am the chair, Michael Campbell, Liza Hickey, Tom Stagg, Laura Turner, as well as the Rails Executive Director and the Rails Director of Communications. So we sort of had an organizational meeting today. One of our objectives was to reach out and interact with other advocacy groups like ISLE and like the ILA Public Policy and Advocacy Committees. So we did have certain people that said they would do those liaison tasks. Laura said she would be the ISLE liaison. Liza is going to be the liaison to the ILA Public Policy Committee, and I'm going to be the liaison to the ILA Advocacy Committee. We also had a nice discussion of the ILA legislative meetups, which were going on recently, and various people had gone to different ones and reported on them, and there is still another one to happen on March 1st that people could go to. And we are hoping to, at future board meetings, report on whatever activities we find that are of interest. Another thing that we came up with was that people would like to have more of a sort of elevator speech that Rails board members could have to when they want to just tell people, why should you care about Rails? So Mary Witt is going to work on developing that, so we'll have that for everyone to use. We scheduled our next meeting for March 22nd before the next board meeting so that then Mary could report to us on the survey results, and that we would see what advocacy issues come up in there. That'll be interesting. So anyone else that was there, what am I forgetting to mention? Anything?
I think that was pretty good. That's what we. I can't think of anything you missed. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, in the packet, we did include materials from that ILA was using, distributing at the legislative meetups, their priorities, et cetera, for people who weren't able to go. And I don't know if anybody wanted to say anything about those. I went to 3 of them. I thought they went well.
Is the March 1st meetup in Galesburg?
No, it's in Oak Brook.
I missed the Galesburg.
Yep.
Well, so next year, the advocacy committee could possibly try and coordinate a little more, encourage the board members or remind people about those events and try and facilitate people going to them. 'Cause that is a big event it's a good opportunity to meet the legislators, the state legislators.
Paul is going to the Oak Brook one.
Yes.
To
Yes,
say a
ma'am.
few words about Rails, as I understand.
Yes.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome, ma'am.
What else were we going to ask Paul or tell Paul?
Oh,
Something in our
the
meet-
prison thing.
The prison thing.
That didn't come off well.
Wow,
Library outreach to prison.
I was telling them at the meeting about the conversation at the Tinley Park
Yes.
meetup with Senator McGuire.
Senator Pat McGuire, yes.
Right. And then that reminded Liza of reminded you of a U of I project?
I don't know why I think U of I has some prison outreach, prison books to prisoners outreach program, but for some reason I seem to think I heard that at some point.
And at some point, and I think it's not going anywhere now, but there was some group that reached out to the Peoria Public Library about helping newly released prisoners reacclimate into the community by using library resources. And I think it's either still in beginning, it's still too early to have done anything yet, or they're not going to do anything. I don't know. Has anybody heard of anything like that before?
Not locally, but nationally I've heard of projects where people are trying to help people reenter society.
Right.
Yeah. If I could just say a few words, Senator McGuire at the Tinley Park ILA Legislative Meetup expressed an interest in getting more books into the hands of prison libraries. Long story, I almost worked in a prison library many years ago, but it didn't happen because of funding issues. And Senator McGuire, in the service area that he represents, and also in the Pinnacle Library Cooperative Service area, we have Stateville Prison, we have a youth center. Am I forgetting anything, Scott?
No, I don't think so.
But since those are also within his territory, Senator McGuire's had conversations with the wardens, and he asked us if we would connect with them. And actually, Scott was mentioning he's already connected with Stateville to see if we can't, help them, help them strengthen their collection to improve conditions for the prisoners there. Both, even if they're going to remain incarcerated for a long time, it still can provide a better environment for everyone, but also help with release and in developing those skills. So we're going to be talking with Senator McGuire. He has the contacts with the wardens to see what we can do together.
If I can bring in Michelle Simmons at Monmouth College. We actually have a group of faculty working at Hill Correctional Institute, which is the prison between here in Monmouth and Galesburg. And we actually have a group of faculty going and teaching classes to a group of prisoners. And it's in collaboration with a program that New York University was putting on, and now the New York University's program has ceased, but we are continuing, and we have worked to, we tried to get books in the prison because they don't have a prison librarian, and the collection is terribly limited. So we're doing it just through the classes. So we have an Amazon site set up, and people who want to contribute can buy books, and we name particular titles that we are teaching with, and then if people want to purchase those, because the prison is very careful about books coming into the prison, and so they need to come directly from Amazon is what the way we've been able to work around this. So I'm really glad to hear that Rails perhaps will be involved, because there's just a terrible need here at the prison close by here.
have to come from Amazon. That makes it
So not
harder.
even
Because you can,
necessarily.
Yeah, that makes it harder.
things can be smuggled in.
Oh, I
Yeah.
get it. It just, the idea was that libraries would donate their.
Yeah.
But there's used book providers on Amazon.
Yes, that's true. I
If
would-
a library
exactly.
group decided to become.
It's a kind of a
Right.
longer, but it
It
should
is,
still
but
happen.
I mean, it's
Yep.
possible.
Yep.
And then every, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry. I do think that, there were ways for books to come into the prison that weren't directly from Amazon, but in this situation, that was the easiest and most expeditious was to go through Amazon. But the process is very difficult, and just some good-hearted person wanting to donate books it really isn't a possibility, it seems.
Each prison and jail is different too. They'll all have different rules, which will make it more frustrating. Still a really valuable cause.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to say, is that each warden is essentially like the king of their own little kingdom, and they all have different, requirements and views on this, so, yeah.
But like you said, still worth doing.
Still worth doing.
Just harder.
Good thing we're smart enough to get through all that.
Right. So maybe, do we want to keep talking about this, or would this be a project for the advocacy committee, or does Paul want to come back to the next meeting, since you seem to have, what do we want to do with this issue at this point? Anything? I'm just putting it out there. Do we want to do anything? Not, I know we are already doing a lot. Just trying to get everyone's feel here.
But Scott and I, the Pinnacle Library Cooperative is having its governing board meeting next week, and this is going to on our agenda. So Scott and I could certainly bring back a report next month about what progress we've made.
Right, yeah, I would be interested, because there's Pekin there's a prison by us in Spoon River in Canton. So.
Sure.
Okay, can we put that on the agenda for next month? Is that
Yep.
how that would work? Okay,
Sure,
you
sure.
would give us an update?
We would be happy to.
And absolutely, and I guess I'm just curious if anybody's ever compiled like a list or a map of all the prisons within Rails, and I mean, like if this little thing, becomes all it could be, maybe it becomes like a best practice, and then we can share that with libraries near all the other
It's a good idea.
prisons or
Sure.
incarceration points.
Yep.
Libraries are more likely to follow through when some of the work has already been done.
Right, or a model
Well, that-
has been developed, or whatever. Yeah.
I mean, the idea has been kind of out there for a
Right.
while, but it's hard to get started. I think especially because, as Daisy says, there's no like one person you can go to. It's all individual. So I'm hoping that having Pinnacle
Well, I
kind
think-
of start things.
I keep doing that. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, that's. I was just going to say. I think having them, look into it in their area might get us going.
Yeah.
What I was going to say, sometimes an idea pops in my head, and I'm not cognizant of what everybody else is saying, but I think the Heartland system has a prison librarian on their board.
Yes, they do. Or yes.
I wonder if maybe they could give us some insights.
Some board education for Rails. That would be great.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, I know that in the Rails service area, there's at least one federal prison. Or federal corrections, there's the one FCI. I don't know if there's.
Dan?
Yeah, that's Pekin.
Pekin, yeah.
Pekin's a member.
There's one downtown too.
Oh.
Like
I think we've
in the
lent
city.
books to
Okay.
Pekin before. Caterpillar.
Yeah,
I know
they received
yeah.
delivery.
Right, yeah.
We have a few, actually fewer than I thought, prison libraries. I think there have been a number that used to be system members, but that dropped out at some point.
Or they lost their librarians.
Yeah, probably, yeah. But we do have a few as members.
So I would say, so I used to be a law librarian. One thing is that it used to be that, and this was in a different state, but it used to be that prison libraries would provide legal research materials. That is not such a thing anymore because most of that is available online, so they don't necessarily have to provide it through physical materials anymore. So that has had an effect on what prison libraries do. I mean, I don't think we're talking about those kind of materials, but that's had an effect on like the existence of prison libraries.
Sense. Fortunately.
Well, it's actually, in some ways, it's fortunate because prisoners can have access
Yes.
to electronic resource materials
True.
that they couldn't have in print.
But it might also have been an excuse to not have a prison library or library, unfortunately.
Okay, good discussion. Thank you, Gwen. Thank you, Paul. And everyone else. Okay, now it's time to hear from the Illinois State Library.
Well, good afternoon, everyone from here at the State Library, and greetings from Secretary White. I was actually on the phone with him, and that's why I was delayed coming to this meeting. So, but welcome everyone we're glad to see everyone, I should say, at the meeting today. So I am also interested as well in the prison library effort. As you've discussed already, there were a number of prison libraries as library system members in years past, and certainly the wardens had a lot to do, I think, with the individual library services. Here at the State Library, we answer at least one question daily in writing from a prisoner.
Wow.
It comes to for research information.
Oops.
You're frozen.
No.
If you can hear us.
And my work here.
You just
Can you hear it now?
froze, Greg.
Yes.
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 Are we working now?
Yes.
Hello?
But
Okay. So we did have a program called Services to the Institutionalized, which had a prison component to it. So it would be interesting to see if the times have changed and this could be redeveloped and see how that could progress. So we'll be following this with great interest as well. I did want to alert you, some of you may be aware already, but each of the state libraries were on a conference call with Google just this past Tuesday regarding the Grow with Google program, which they are extending programming now to public libraries in each state. Not all of us were fully aware of what they were wanting to do. They are using the Public Library Association as an administrative partner in this. The systems, I will be hearing much more information, but essentially what they're doing are offering free digital skills workshops and one-for-one coaching at library locations in the state, and it's actually conducted by Google. The public registers themselves for the programming. So how will each of the state libraries be involved, and in this case the library systems? About 8 weeks prior to them coming to a state, and we do not have a date yet for Illinois, they will make an announcement, and we will be working with the Public Library Association to identify 3 locations where these workshops would be conducted. And in addition to that, libraries across the country, they will be able to apply for grants up to $1,000 each in support of this initiative locally on what they might develop on their own. So certainly as we get more information, we will pass that along. The first library workshop that they announced was just conducted in Philadelphia. And they are going to Maryland next week to begin the first of the state series at the Annapolis Public Library. So we will be providing more information, and certainly the library systems can become involved in that. Census 2020, the Complete Count Commission, of which the State Library, the Illinois Library Association, the library systems have been participating in. We are in the process of getting packets out to each of the public libraries in the state regarding a poster contest and additional information regarding the census for 2020. The contest itself will be designed for any public, parochial, private homeschool student ages 7 through 12. All we're asking is that public libraries make patrons aware of this. Entries will be submitted to the state library. There will be final selections made from various age groups, and then an overall winner, which the poster will be produced and distributed statewide. The submission deadline, or the submission time frame, is May 1 to June 17, 2019. But again, that information will be going out within days from our office. Of course, the budget address for fiscal year 2020 was this week. That forms the initial framework for what may develop for next fiscal year. Right now, we're projecting, for the Secretary of State Library and Literacy Grant programs, level funding, and we're pleased to report that as compared to some years in recent history. So certainly as that develops, we will keep the systems and everyone apprised of that as well. Along those same lines, the FY20 library system area per capita grant applications, we will send those out March 1st. We met just yesterday to go over the final edits. The document is really identical to last year, which should make it easy for the library systems and the library system staffs to compile. It would be based upon, the budget document would be based upon the FY19 allocation made to each of the library systems. Upcoming meetings, we're pleased that we're hosting the Illinois Library Association's trustee training here at the State Library on Saturday, March 9th. I believe we have about 25, or they are expecting about 25 attendees at the session here. March 16, we will be at Waukegan High School for the unveiling of the Illinois Reads program, and then later that day, designation of a literary landmark for Ray Bradbury at the Ray Bradbury Park. That will happen at 4:51 p.m. in Waukegan. So that should be a fun day. And with that, maybe that's it for today.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Hi, Greg. This is Scott Poynton. I'm just curious if you might know, I believe it's March 14th, the Live and Learn Construction Grant Committee is having their, the big day where everybody defends their applications. Do you happen to know a timeline after that when when they hope to make decisions?
Well, I think they'll come out of that meeting with a list that day that they'll pass along for our review at the executive level. I would hope that it's very, very soon, as far as so that we can get the processing done right away. I will say this, that this year maybe is going to be a little more challenging than the last couple. The requests are far exceeding the money available. So they will have to review those applications quite closely.
Okay.
Yeah, Greg, this is Dave Berry. I have a question.
Hi, Dave.
How you doing, Greg? But I'm asking a question. Have you come to an opinion on House Bill 3447? Are you familiar with that?
Which
body
bill
cam?
is that?
Cabello?
Body cam? That has
Right.
not been sent to me.
It's, it was introduced the other day. It's been referred to the Rules Committee. But 3447 would require all elected and appointed officials to wear body cams during their official meetings.
What?
What?
Are you
No.
serious?
Is it April 1st? What is happening?
I'm serious. It's in there. You can look it up.
I might have an immediate opinion, but I to get what our official opinion might have to be.
I don't know how long it's going to
I'm
be in
unaware
Rules
of that.
Committee. I have a feeling it'll be there a long time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
3447.
That could be something that never makes it out. So I'm not aware of that. That's
Wow.
interesting. Wow.
Other reason why I don't want to
Just in
elect
time.
board. Yeah, seriously.
Thank you, Greg.
I presume this public body would have an objection to that. So.
I guess.
For God's sake.
Who'd want to see it?
If asked to comment, I will make sure that is shared.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Greg, could you clarify what it is that Google's going to be doing at the workshops?
Well, as best as I can, because this was news to, I think, at least 42 of the states on the call. Other than the few, we have, I guess their staff actually they have staff, and we were given a contact at Google if we have more questions, and I don't know that any of us have had time to formulate anything yet about what would occur, but I guess they actually have staff who come in and will train the general public, and I think most of it is going to be aligned with if you have a business interest, come to the public library, learn better digital skills. It may be something as simple as assuring that your business is easily located on a Google map when someone Googles your entity. I think it's a very basic training in one day, and that's really all I can find. I did some follow-up research on their website for information, and I guess because the first of these is to occur next week, we're kind of waiting to see what the outcome is. But they're going to give 640 grants of $1,000 each nationwide.
Okay.
And
seems odd to me, but okay.
D, if I may, I don't know if it's in conjunction with this, but I know Google has also been providing seed money for training centers around the country. And if I remember reading correctly, Mattoon, Illinois is going to be getting $250,000, but specifically geared towards, I think, developing entrepreneurial skills with Google products. So I don't know that this is in tandem, how related they are to these Grow with Google things, but there seems to be multiple projects afoot.
Well, and one of the trainings that they cite that will be conducting in public libraries was just conducted in their new Redwood City, California training center. It wasn't associated with the library, but they gave information about that and photos from that training. So it's really now just bringing libraries into the fold and having Google staff available. So.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now we are going to move on to new business, and Dan is going to start us off with a membership change.
Okay, this is a request for a recommendation for membership to the state library. It's Rock Falls School District number 13. We've been really fortunate to have Kristen Schaff from the Rock Falls Township High School number 301 sort of be a point person for us on this. All of the students from this school district, number 13, matriculate to her high school district. And she's really involved in IO, she's really involved in Rails. She knows the area and she knows the region. So she's been talking to them about membership, which is great because I'm new to this. So it's been really helpful. As I mentioned in your board document, they're very interested in joining the Rock River Library Consortium. I think that's a big part of it. I met with Dan Eriks, who's the superintendent, along with 3 library staff members. They have 4 schools, only 3 have libraries. But they had a lot of great questions about membership. I think they're interested in grants that we can give them. I think they're interested in things like delivery, continuing education, ebooks. So I think it was a really positive meeting. And does anyone have any questions for me? I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Dan. So, may I have a motion to approve the recommendation as presented and request final approval from the Illinois State Library?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, so I've moved by Daisy and second by Scott. Don't have here, do we do a yay, nay?
Yeah, you just. Yeah.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Or no? Opposed, no, I'm sorry. Motion carried. Motion approved.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, next we have the appointment of the nominating committee. That is myself and Dee is going to update the board.
Yes, so we do have a nominating committee. Just to remind you, the seats that we will have open for the election this year, we have 2 at-large seats, 1 special library seat, and 2 trustee seats. So the nominating committee, Kate Hall has agreed to chair it, and she has rounded up a group of go-getters that include Lisa Marie Smith, who is a trustee as well as a staff person in a library, Peggy Danhoff, who is a trustee at Fountaindale, Leora Siegel, who is a special librarian at the Botanic Gardens and has been on the ILA board as well as the Public Policy Committee, and Alyssa Williams, who is the director in Morton. So that'll help us a little bit downstate. So we're hoping to have a meeting of the committee soon. We want to be sure that this group has been, they know that the importance that the board has really raised this year the profile of the importance of diversity. So that will be, top of the list, and as well as getting, the best possible candidates. So.
Deirdre, can you refresh our memory? Who's done?
I would be happy to refresh your memories.
Right.
So Laura's seat is up, and she cannot run again, unfortunately, for us. I don't know about for her, but
I
mostly
actually
for
have
us.
enjoyed Rails, and I will miss it.
The trustees are Sue and Michelle, and they can run for re-election. And the at-large are you.
Okay. I thought so.
And Daisy.
Right.
And of course, Daisy is, for some reason that I don't understand, is actually leaving Illinois. And so
It's the body cam thing. Telling my board about that would be pretty.
You need body armor, right? Yeah. So that's the situation.
Okay.
I have a question. I'm thinking, so who counts as a special librarian for that? Because I was just thinking about people to mention it to, but I was.
You mean do you have to be from a special library?
Like what counts as, like the whole definition of special libraries is sometimes a little hazy.
I would say the best way to define it, it would be not an academic library,
Right.
a public library, or a school library.
Okay.
So it can be a museum, it can be a law firm, it can, I mean, some
Could
of.
be a prison.
But it's about their
Prison.
employer, not their specific job within that employer, is the question, okay?
You know, for example, Northwestern has a number of libraries, and I think some of them might be academic libraries, but some of them might be hospital librarians, which would then count as special libraries.
Oh, okay, so, because I was thinking of like, say, the law librarians, which some of them are law firms, but some of them are in law schools.
Yep.
They're considered special libraries.
Right, so even though they're academic librarians, they could still be special librarians too.
I would say go by our membership directory.
Pardon me?
I would say go by our membership directory.
Yeah.
Yeah, L2, where, you know, if they're listed under special libraries in L2.
Okay, I don't know if places like that, we'll say like at our library, we also have a medical library, but they're not, I don't think they're separate, they're just part of us.
They have to be a separate special library for Rails.
Okay.
They have to be listed under special libraries in L2.
And that varies by institution, how they do it. But, I mean, essentially, they have to be a member first. You have anything you want to add, Dan? You're our specialist.
No, but
Specialist.
but you're right. It's the agency, not the person.
Right.
And what agency you are in depends where you would fall in terms of, because you might actually be a special librarian, but you're working at a university, an academic library.
Right. Because didn't someone from the University of Illinois Medical School go to our special library
Yes.
thing at the one we had at CAT? Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
Yes. So they must consider themselves a special library, maybe if they showed up at that, or
No, they
or did they just come because they were close?
Probably
Okay.
the latter.
Okay.
It's multi-type.
Right, right. It's a multi-type within an organization.
Excuse me, Dee, I have a question.
Yep.
With the elections coming up April 2nd, what happens if somebody on the nominating committee is not reelected? So no, as a trustee, for example, can they still sit on the nominating committee?
Or do you mean like be a candidate for this board if they lose their?
Specifically, Peggy Danhoff, for example, of Fountaindale. She's up for reelection, and I hear it's very contested.
It's a good point.
So,
I don't know.
Come April-
I would say probably not.
Okay.
Right?
Just a matter of a point.
Yes, Dave.
Wouldn't she be able to stick until her term is up?
When's her term? It
It would be
wouldn't.
the,
so it's
May.
next month, would be in May.
Yeah.
Kind of like at the, whatever their ordinance is.
Yep.
That's when her term.
I would think so, when it's certified, when it's certified by the clerk.
But we're going to know the results of the April 2nd consolidated election before this election is complete.
Yeah,
So,
Okay.
yeah,
yep.
Well, it's just a matter of sitting.
No,
on
no,
it.
it's, you're right, yep.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll make sure that we know what that, yeah, we'll make sure we
It
know.
would be covered there.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank you.
Okay, we will move on to the March and April board meeting locations.
Yeah, so currently, the board meeting in March is scheduled at East Peoria on March 22nd. And then the April meeting is here somewhere. So some of us need to be in Springfield the evening of, I'm looking at Scott, the evening of April
26th.
26th.
Yeah.
April, yes, because of, this happened last year too, because of the Elevate
Yeah.
program, that's next day in Springfield, and we have to be in Springfield for training on the evening. So there is no way that I can get from here to safely, anyway, safely in, less than 2.5, 3 hours. So appreciate it if we could move the April meeting to East Peoria, and then have a meeting in March either at here, or we had thought maybe of going to Aurora, even though you will not be there.
Michaela would be happy to have you.
So it is
Talked
up
to her
to the
yesterday.
board where you would like to be in March. Yes, Dave?
My druthers would be to go to Aurora
Okay.
in March and East Peoria in April.
Okay.
I don't want other people to think.
We have not been to Aurora in in a couple of years.
Mhm.
It's not far, and we get to see a library.
And we'll have a new director, so
Yes.
that's exciting too.
So Aurora in March and then East Peoria in April.
That would be great.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
Yes.
I will make a motion to change the meeting location in March to Aurora, and the April meeting be held in East Peoria.
Okay.
Fabulous.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carried. Okay, we will move on to unfinished business.
Yes, so we neglected to do a roll call vote at the January meeting for changes to the compensation schedule and salary chart. I said that backwards, and since it was technically an expenditure of money, that needed to happen. So I'm asking if you would sort of vote that in a roll call manner.
I move that we ratify the January staffing changes and revised org chart.
Okay. In a second?
Second.
Okay. Margie, will you please call the roll?
Yes. Christine Barr.
Yes.
Dave Barry.
Yes.
Susan Busenberg.
Yes.
Gwen Gregory.
Yes.
Liza Hickey.
Yes.
Jay Caston.
Yes.
Paul Mills.
Yes.
Scott Poynton.
Yes.
Daisy Porter Reynolds.
Yes.
Dee Reynolds. Dee, are you on the phone?
I'm sorry I pushed my mute button. Yes.
That's okay, thank you. Nadia Sheikh.
Yes.
Michelle Simmons.
Yes.
Thomas Stagg.
Yes.
And Laura Turner.
Yes. All right. Okay, we are at 9.2 Strategic Plan Progress Report Discussion. Dee?
Yes, thank you. So at the meeting last month, we gave you the document, which is included in the packet this month too, the progress report on the plan, the operational plan and the strategic plan. And you asked me if I would, at future meetings, go through some of the items, some of the goals and the accomplishments in a more in-depth way, because it's extensive document. And so I thought I would just kind of take it from the top and work my way through over the next however many meetings it seems to be worthwhile to do it. So the first goal is about resource sharing, and a couple of the more interesting things that we've been working on are programs that have national and statewide reach, and they are Simply E and the eBook Summit. And I did put some information in your packet about these things, and then also about I'm going to talk a little bit about the Digital Public Library of America. So ebooks, as you know, are a hot commodity. And Rails has been in the business of providing ebooks almost since we became Rails way back in 2013. And there's been, initially, it was really difficult to actually purchase ebooks for Rails because publishers thought we were going to make them available to every single person who lives in the Rails service area simultaneously. And so there were publishers that we couldn't buy from for a long time. Simon & Schuster being one example, Random House. They were selling to libraries, but they wouldn't sell to consortia. Well, then they started selling to consortia as well, but there still is an ongoing issue with pricing. Libraries, not just libraries and consortia tend to pay much higher prices than individuals do, or than that print books are sold for. And so, and we still don't have access to all the books we'd like to have access to. Some of the publishers limit brand new books or they sell them for excessively high prices. And all of this is based still on the one book, one user, even though it's a digital object, which to me is absurd, but that's just the way the publishers are selling them. Except for BiblioBoard. The BiblioBoard is our geolocated platform. You've met, Mitchell has come here to speak to the board, and we purchased that platform for the entire state, and that is simultaneous use. And it does not include, materials from the big 5 publishers. So it doesn't have James Patterson, doesn't have Gone Girl, but it has a lot of really fascinating sort of small press and self-published materials. It's a very rich resource. It has dissertations. It has local history materials. So anyway, the point being that we spend a lot of time and energy trying to bring ebooks to libraries because they need them. And having a consortial collection helps them by not having to buy them individually. So there's 2 things here about ebooks. One is we had this summit at ALA last summer, and it was largely put together by representatives from Rails, notably Veranda Pitchford. I helped somewhat. And our colleagues in Massachusetts, Steve Spahn, the Massachusetts Library System, and Khalifa in California, where Veranda works now. So it was a really great, and Jane was there too. I don't know if anybody else attended that, but we brought together about 80 people, publishers, a lot of librarians, academic librarians, public librarians. The head of Overdrive was there. Important, representatives from Penguin Random House. Lots of consortial representation from around the country, the book industry study group, some state librarians, all to talk about how to, what should be the library agenda about ebooks. We have to get together what is it that we want and present it to publishers, and we have to be able to figure out better licensing models. This one book, one user thing is crazy, or the 26 circs thing is crazy. It's all, and it's all kind of, there's no pay per use. Well, I guess it's kind of growing. There's some in academic libraries. There's some resources that are priced that way.
And Hoopla ebooks are priced that way.
Yes, and Hoopla ebooks. But
Canopy's that way.
Yes. But and I don't know them all, but it's not anything that libraries or libraries or library users would design as being something that works for them. It's very much what works for publishers, maybe the authors in some cases, the publishers and the aggregators. So, we had this ebook summit, and there's going to be some more working groups. I actually went to some meetings about it at ALA, which maybe I can talk about later in the midwinter report. But I just wanted you to know that Rails is very involved in this national project to try to make ebooks more accessible to our libraries and our members. And I hope that I want you to know about this because you should be proud of it, that Rails is one of the leaders of this effort, because we're actually making some progress. So that's one thing that we're doing.
Dean, would you say at that conference that the feeling is that the publishing industry is essentially saying, things were the way they were for the last 100 years and we're not making that mistake again? That's why they're building all these ways to charge us?
That's been my opinion, that they don't know what else to do, and it's amazing to me, it continues to be amazing to me how much publishers don't know about libraries, given how many years we've been doing business and how much money we spend.
And how we're 12% of their industry.
I know, they continue to think that we don't promote sales, and there is study after study shows that people who use the library buy books. It is not a either or. It is an and. It's just, I don't know. But
People that go to grocery stores also go to restaurants. It's the same idea.
Yeah, it's a good.
That's a great
exactly.
analogy. Yeah. That's great.
More likely, probably, right? Another important piece of this has been, and this has been part of our meetings at ALA too. All of this grew out of, I should say, the ALA division ASCLA, which is the Association of Specialized Cooperating and Government Libraries. And that's what we belong to, because that's what we are. We're specialized in cooperating. And one of the projects that came to we have an ebook, a consortial ebook interest group that Veranda and I co-founded. And one of the projects that came to us early at this interest group was this Simply E. And Paul's intimately, I think, somewhat intimately involved in this now, but Simply E was developed by, I don't know, maybe intimately is the wrong word, but closely involved.
Whatever you want to say.
Simply E was developed by the New York Public Library. Their programmers, wrote this program, and they got some money from IMLS to, make it more robust. And then we all wrote a grant to make it work for consortia. And what it does is if you're a patron at New York Public Library, we'll just start there. They've got a lot of different ebook platforms and ebook vendors, more even than more than libraries around here. If you go in and if you're a patron and you sign on to Simply E, that app, that platform brings together all of the ebooks in one place. So you don't have to go from Overdrive to Hoopla to Access 360. They're all right there. It's fabulous. And so we've been, as I say, we've been involved in this grant with Minitex, which is the University of Minnesota, and Pinnacle is testing this for us in Illinois. So I don't know where you are with that, but I think you're getting closer.
Matt keeps working.
Yep. So that's great because, and so what I've been hearing lately is that New York Public Library has pledged to support this further development for 2 more years. Good. They put a lot of money into this.
Cool.
And the Digital Public Library of America is working with them to develop some sort of a governance for the Simply E project because, there's a lot of stakeholders in this now. Us, the whole state of Connecticut, a lot of libraries in California, a lot of libraries in Texas. And we don't want it, and New York Public Library understands we don't want it to just be all the decisions made about features, et cetera, to be decided by New York Public Library. So, so that's another big thing that we're working on. So it's quite interesting. And as I say, important to our users, important to our libraries. It may seem kind of far off and esoteric because it's New York Public, but if you Google Simply E, you can read about it and see how useful it might end up being for everyone. And then just a little bit more about the Digital Public Library of America.
I just have one. Just
Yes,
about the
of course.
ebooks.
Yes.
I guess I'm just wondering, I don't know how it works with like the academics and the specials. Because I know you guys have ebooks and we have them, but it's different from this. Is there any coordination among all the industries and types?
Coordination of?
I don't, how would I say it? Like, I guess I'm just wondering, like, in the ebook world, is there anything that would help serve the other types of libraries, not the public?
Oh,
I mean,
Simply E is not just for public libraries.
So it's, maybe I don't know it very well.
Right. I mean, Simply E for consortia is, the University of Minnesota is the lead on that grant. So it's really very much focused on the user and the particular ebook platform, and the library then has to, implement the back end of the platform so that it's available to the public. Did I say that sort of right, Paul, would you say?
So I need to look at Simply E,
Yeah.
basically, is what it comes to.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, Laura, because I was thinking of that too. So is it only
Okay.
for ebooks, or does it include other electronic resources as well?
I think it's specifically for e-books. But that doesn't, I could be wrong, and that doesn't mean it can't be, it's not exactly open source, but it's kind of close to that. I mean, it's been evolving.
I'm on the website just for New York Public Library, and it says ebooks and audiobooks.
And audiobooks?
Yeah.
Well, and I think, and probably this is the same for special libraries, is that in academic libraries, a lot of, like our Discovery for Electronic Resources has to incorporate e-journals as well as ebooks, because they're as important, if not more important.
Right.
Yes, of course.
So
And
we tend to use discovery tools that mash the ebooks and the e-journals and other electronic resources together.
yes, of course. And going back to the ebook summit, there was an advisory group that got together a year ago to just decide what the scope of the summit was. Should it include e-journals? And the decision was no, because we had to start somewhere.
Right.
That you could actually say, it's this, because it just proliferates. So I guess the answer to your question is no. Big picture. Yeah, I know, right? So then, just a little bit about the Digital Public Library of America. So that is kind of there's not a real physical library. It is a virtual federated library that is sort of a group of hubs. Illinois is a service hub, which means that we provide materials to the Digital Public Library of America, and then there are content hubs in other states. Basically, they're bringing together, the idea is to bring together all the digital material in the world. They started out really focusing on cultural heritage. They're now focusing additionally on access to ebooks. They have an annual conference, and it is in Chicago this year. And I did send you, I included some information about it. If you're interested in going, we'd be happy to defray the cost for board members to go to it. I think you'd learn a lot. And it's a great opportunity since it's right here. So DPLA is, Greg, I don't know if he's still there. I might want to say something about Illinois as a content hub and Illinois' view of the Digital Public Library of America. It's been grant funded the whole time. We're a little bit worried about the fact that it doesn't have stable funding per se, because it's doing a lot of important work, but they're working on getting their house and their budget in order. So, but I do think you'd get a lot out of the conference, and it's in April. Did you want to add anything, Greg?
No, I think you covered that well. I mean, we have made an investment at that at the state level and are going to continue to do so. I think what you just expressed at the end, what the future looks like for DPLA itself, I think is what we're all watching very closely, as far as what the organization itself is and what services they might provide actually to the public through the library community in the country.
I think their original goal was to capture materials that aren't housed in traditional libraries. Make sure they're digitally available forever. As you can imagine, we have enormous riches in our member libraries around the state, that are not available unless you go physically to that library and, make an appointment to go in there and look at things. That is not great for the libraries that own these materials. It's not great for genealogists. It's not great for people who are just generally interested in a topic. It's not great for scholars. So it's a very worthwhile effort, and I certainly hope that it manages to succeed. So that's why we're doing these things in our strategic plan. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for your report.
You're welcome.
Okay, we are moving on to board development.
Yes, so
Okay.
we thought we would report to you on the ALA Midwinter Conference, and then hear any reports that, obviously the board would like to make. But do you want to start, Jane?
Sure.
Are you going to give Anne's talking points?
I wasn't planning to.
Okay, all right. We'll send it out to the board.
Okay. I had looked over my notes and picked out 2 programs I attended to tell you about. One was titled Responding to Needs and Trends, State and National Vantage Points. This was a IMLS program that also included speakers from the state library agencies in Arizona, Wyoming, and Rhode Island. Each state does have to put together 5-year plans for LSTA funding, and the latest period for that covers 2018 through 2022. So they noted that those plans tend to focus on talking book services, service to rural populations, broadband, and non-library workforce seem to be themes in the plans that were submitted. IMLS has 3 focal areas: institutional capacity, information access, and lifelong learning. Of course, those cover a lot of ground. And they also noted that planning is underway. Apparently, there's several states that are working together on a proposal for a national conference on virtual and augmented reality. So I'm thinking this is an area that we need to pay attention to. The comments from the state library agencies, Arizona noted that they have a big trend towards collaborative purchasing of databases. In Rhode Island, their state agency is required to provide 25% of their public library funding. They do require an MLS of not only library directors, but at least some department heads. Youth services heads were particularly mentioned there. And they are also thinking about adding requirements for continuing education units or some type of certification for ongoing education so librarians can keep their skills up. I thought the Wyoming remarks were particularly interesting because it's so different than the Illinois library environment. From the beginning, their public library service has been by county, and so they have 23 public libraries in total across the state versus over 600 for Illinois. And also a single statewide integrated library system for all their public libraries. And they also have some school and special libraries that participate in that. So people can check out at any public library across the state. So one of their big issues that the state library puts a lot of time and effort into is encouraging collaboration and communication among their public library directors particularly. And that's been increasingly important because, as we've seen here, as long-term librarians retire, they have a lot of new people coming in. And as a side note, they also noted that the Wyoming state government is really encouraging libraries to come in and use blockchain. That's becoming kind of a hub of the blockchain. because of some favorable law to there. So, and then the other session I wanted to mention was the Publisher Vendor Library Relations Interest Group. So this is kind of a nice add-on to the ebook discussion. This time it focused on a report by Ithaca SR, which does research mainly in the academic library realm. They published a report looking at library acquisition patterns for U.S. academic library book publishing, and it's on their website if you're interested. That's Ithaca with a K. It actually only looked at a small percentage of academic library acquisitions. It didn't look at anything purchased through recurring subscriptions, which accounts for about 75% of what academic libraries buy. It noted that ebook prices are rising faster than print books. Publishers don't know exactly what libraries are buying because they work generally through jobbers. So this report did use data from the acquisitions modules, various library ILSs. Gobi was found to be their main vendor. Amazon was second for print books, which was very perturbing, of course, to the vendors. They noted Amazon to have worse metadata, can be difficult for billing purposes, but the libraries like it because of how fast they get the materials. And the other note was that short-term loan acquisitions where you can do a few loans of materials before buying it on digital materials, and then at a certain point, if it's borrowed enough times, it automatically triggers a purchase. Those are still significant, but they have decreased versus a few years ago. So. Questions?
Dan, I'm not familiar with blockchain.
Blockchain is the technology behind Bitcoin.
Yeah, I don't know that
Digital currency.
Blockchain is even more.
Yeah. And I'm certainly far from an expert on it. Yeah.
Say controversial on
Yes, it is.
currency.
Yes.
Right.
I don't understand it either, but it's.
Some people are rich.
Or what?
Some people are rich from it. That's all I really know.
Well, there have been a lot of workshops given.
There have been
I think it's something
some
we need to pay
workshops.
attention to, although I don't really know why.
And it has been, it changed things so it sort of creates an audit trail. So they've been saying it's more secure, although I've been hearing recently they're figuring out to hack that as well. So.
Of course.
There's always.
Of course, yeah.
I'll look.
We'll get back to you too.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe you can give us a report.
Yeah.
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin and blockchain.
Right.
BC.
Does anyone else have an ALA report? Go ahead. Sure.
Come on up here, Anna.
So I also had the opportunity to go to Midwinter, and just to remind you all, I'm the e-content specialist here at Rails, so most of what I did at Midwinter has to do with ebooks.
We were in a lot of the same rooms.
We were, yeah. So that was one of the ones I was going to highlight was the ASCLA consortial ebook meeting, as well as the Reader's First meeting.
Right.
So that the ASCLA, again, is the Association of Specialized Government Cooperative Library Agencies. I had to look that up today because a lot of letters. So yeah, that was a really good meeting. Really interesting to be sort of the first time attending at that. It was an opportunity to meet with other organizations and people involved in sort of large ebook projects, not just libraries, but also there were vendors there were publishers, at least one publisher there, and some other interested parties. We heard from somebody from, I think, Publishers Weekly, somebody from Novelist, all sorts of investor groups there. Learned a lot about sort of the digital media lending landscape and lots of different situations, especially in Canada, interestingly enough. There was a Canadian library organization there who sort of gave us an interesting update. I really appreciate the opportunity to meet with Steve Spahn and Tressa Santillo from the Massachusetts library system, because they also have a statewide ebook project that they're doing. It used to be hosted by Baker and Taylor's Access 360 platform, which is what eRead Illinois is currently on for us. And they recently moved their collection from Access 360 to Overdrive. And so they sort of gave us an update on what that experience was like, some of the positives, some of the negatives. It was really sort of eye-opening to hear about their experience. So that was a really interesting meeting. I also, the other presentation I want to talk about was I attended the research update and info session on the Panorama project, which was really interesting. So Panorama project is a project that sort of aims to use data to determine the impact that libraries have on book sales and book awareness. It is, I think Overdrive is one of the companies that's behind it. So they gave us an update on some of their research to sort of determine whether or not libraries are impacting book sales in sort of the big picture. So they did a community reading project where they took a book on Overdrive. It was a memoir that was independently published. It was Flatbrook with Two Goats, I think was the name of it. They made it available on Overdrive for simultaneous access, so anybody could have it without having to wait. None of that one book, one user model that we see with most other library ebooks. And they also ran a marketing campaign and then sort of pushed it to all of their libraries. I think most libraries in the United States use Overdrive. So this book got a ton of exposure, and then they tracked how well that book did in terms of sales. And you can see these marked upticks when the program started. Sales shot up for the book. And then they had like a secondary push, and you see it spike again after that. And so they sort of showed us the results of that and plans to do future campaigns like that with Overdrive. They also announced sort of an effort to look at readers advisory in libraries. Different readers advisory efforts that libraries do, and then sort of tracking those efforts and seeing how those also can sort of impact ebook sales or book sales and marketing. So yeah, those were my highlights.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else from ALA?
I think I'll just add that since we've talked plenty at this point, I think, but that the Panorama project, if you might want to take a look at that. It's very interesting what they're doing. I'm very curious about why it's happening, why Overdrive is doing this. I'm sure there's, they're a company, they want to make money. But there's no question that we need more data about libraries and usage and sales and all that. So I am on one of their committees, and just to keep tabs. And Anna comes to the meetings sometimes too. And there's no question that whole that sort of pilot that they did with that book was the data on that is really interesting. I'll send that out to the board because it's startling. You can see in the graph the huge peaks when they had programs. So that's it.
Okay, we have a board member report. And that is one of our board members has accepted a new position. That is Daisy Porter Reynolds has accepted the position as Chief Public Services Officer at the St. Louis Public Library. Sounds exciting, actually.
It is going to be exciting.
So Daisy, on behalf of the other board members, the member libraries, and Rail staff, we want to thank you for your contributions and for sharing your time and experience with us. And Dee has a plaque she would like to present you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you, Daisy.
And we wish you the best of luck.
Yes, I don't know if anybody wants to take our picture, Nikki.
It's a very exciting picture, the plaque between two women picture that libraries do so well.
Well, would you like to mix it up a bit? You guys want to
wait?
Hold on. Of course.
So this is your
Technology, just a second.
This is your last meeting.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, it is.
You want to
I think it'll be okay.
Just a photo down, Paul.
He's a pro.
One more. Indeed. Work it, ladies.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for
Is there anything you
sharing
want to
your
say,
time.
Daisy? as
This
you
was a
leave?
really great experience, and I am sorry to be leaving Rails. It seems like you all are doing good things, and I've really enjoyed my time. I would be running for reelection. However, I don't think you take Missouri residents, so it's probably not going to happen. I do have one additional non-related announcement, if I may. Sure. You all, of course, know that my town was the site of the mass shooting last Friday, a whole week ago now. Seems crazy. I just wanted to let you know that we did go on soft lockdown on 2 of our buildings. We were not affected. I do have a staff member who's part-time evenings for us, who's a teacher at the school next door, and she was stuck in a bathroom with 25 first graders for the whole thing.
Oh, no.
I haven't spoken to her personally yet. We don't have the same schedule, but our thought to her. Also, if anyone wanted to contribute, there are always a variety of GoFundMes that pop up, many of which are not necessarily legitimate. There is one that is legitimate for sure, and that is Aurora Strong, the GoFundMe, and that goes to the families of the individuals who lost their lives that day. We're also very grateful to our police department, who really, they got there within 4 minutes, and that's just amazing. They were able to prevent more lives from being lost, and we're very proud of them and the way that our police chief has conducted herself on national television.
Mm-hmm.
She's really, she's outstanding. Mm-hmm. She's wonderful. And we are doing things like having cards that people can write in our libraries. Kids are drawing pictures of police cars, and we're going to bring those over to the police and so forth. So if you want to support any of those efforts or the GoFundMe, let me know and I can connect you to the right place.
A sad day.
It was a bad day. It was a sad day.
Hey, does anyone have anything that they would like to share that's going on in their library?
Well, I do. So I may have that the Carly Consortium is going to be migrating to the Ex Libris Alma platform. We're getting more information about that, and part of what Ex Libris does is they have so there's something like 90 libraries involved in this that are part of the iShare group with Carly. So Ex Libris is having a group of 5 libraries that will be the vanguard. You don't implement it early, but you get to test it early and help shape the system for the other libraries. So the UIC library is going to be one of those 5 vanguard test libraries. The other ones are, in case you want to know, UIUC, SI Dale, the Newberry, and North Central College. So those aren't all Rails libraries, but some of them are. So we're all going to be the kind of testers, and the implementation is kind of set for June 2020 for the actual.
Getting there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyone else have anything from their library or anyone on the phone?
Sure. The White Oak Library District is on March 2nd. We're having our 3rd annual STEM Fest, and we never specified in years 1 and 2 that it was an event geared towards children. I mean, everyone just assumes because it's STEM and that kind of relates to school. But this year we really tried to make an emphasis to the public that while that is a component, older teenagers and adults are into these things too. So it is an all ages event. But we had 650 people, I think, turn up last year for this. So, it just keeps getting bigger and better every year. But it's from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Saturday, March 2nd at our Romeyville branch. And it's been great to see the schools. We don't always have success necessarily, building bridges with schools and trying to engage and do things together, but this is something the schools just love and they promote it well. So I think that really helps, and we're looking forward to it.
Anyone else or anyone on the phone?
Laura, I have something. It's not necessarily library specific, but this morning the Illinois Library Association Intellectual Freedom Committee met, and one of our topics was the Intellectual Freedom Award. So I would just think about if you know anyone to nominate for the award or could encourage someone to, I'd appreciate it. One thing we did talk about in the committee meeting is that, certainly a common nominee is someone who's defended intellectual freedom, which is certainly, worthy of that. But, the award also encompasses people who advance intellectual freedom by taking pro-acts. So, that might give you a different frame of reference for someone who might be a potential nominee for the award. And keeping my ILA hat on, there's lots of awards out there. Deadline is May 15th. I'd encourage you to take a look at those. It's, I think, important to celebrate our accomplishments. So many awards. It'd be wonderful to see lots of nominees for all the categories.
I'll piggyback on that. Having been involved with ILA for a number of years, there are many of those awards that are loosely tied to, say, a committee, and the committee is in full panic mode, a month after the deadline for nominations closes because no one has been nominated, and then the committee works very hard to try to nominate. But it would be wonderful if the committees didn't have to do that, and the library community of Illinois just nominated people.
So that's true, and there's like trustee awards and all kinds of different awards.
Academic
Many
librarian
different
awards.
awards.
Yep. Technical services award.
Somebody just write my name in. I'll take it. Just kidding. Anyway. Anybody else? Anything they'd like to share from their library? Okay. Agenda building for board meeting. So the next Rails board meeting will be held on Friday, March 22nd in Aurora. Correct.
Right.
And the Rail Service of the Month report will be the resource sharing picture in Illinois. Okay, we had a lot of good things today.
What did we on the agenda next month?
The resource sharing picture in Illinois will be the Rail Service.
Earlier in the meeting, we said
from
from the
Scott.
Oh yeah,
from the
right.
the prison.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yep. Got it. Thank you.
Also, I think that next month I'm supposed to give introduction to academic libraries.
Oh,
Board development report.
Yeah.
Board development. Okay.
Academic libraries.
Okay, so we'll do Paul's prison report. Yours on it. Paul's report
field
on
trip to jail.
library.
Paul's report on intimacy also, I think.
Oh yeah, who's doing the body cam one?
I think Dave will follow up on that.
Yeah, he brought it up.
And Sue, you'll do the blockchain?
I'll do the blockchain.
Bitcoin. Right. And Gwen will do the academic library.
All right.
Okay. With that, I will us to adjournment at 2:57 p.m. Thank you very much, and everyone have a safe trip back home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
you.
Too.